What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Fantasy Trade Targets here on the Fantasy Stock Exchange. We had quite an action-packed week 4. A lot of big names going off finally. It was really exciting. But before we get into today's episodes, I'm going to take this time to introduce my good buddy, Dylan Mazzola. How you doing, man?
Good. I've been on a couple of videos before. Hopefully people who keep watching them have realized that. I'm happy to be back, obviously.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped to get you back on here. I think this is your first time actually in the season, right? Or were you on here a little earlier?
I might have been on one earlier, but I think predominantly most of the videos I was on were prior to the season. Who to draft, who not, stuff like
Yeah, I
that.
think you and I had done a lot of dynasty work before this, but
Yes.
nonetheless, still always fun and really pumped to get you in here for some regular season fantasy trade targets. So I'm going to kick us off right now with the first buy low of the day, and I'm choosing Marquise Hollywood Brown. So Marquise Brown so far in the season really hasn't done anything spectacular. Even this past week, he only had 4 catches. He did go off for 86 yards, which is awesome. But I do have to highlight that he was targeted 8 times against Washington. So looking at the rest of the season, Hollywood Brown is going to have a tremendous rest of the season schedule. There's really not a ton of terribly hard games for him down the stretch.
No.
What's that?
No, I was agreeing with you. I was saying no. I was agreeing with what you were saying.
Oh, yeah. His rest of the season schedule is fantastic for the receivers. But with Marquise Brown, so far in the season, he has had 3 games in a row now where he's had 12.6 PPR points or less. He's way overdue for one of those big Marquise Brown type games that we've come to know him for last season. And although he's a risky option, I think he's a great guy to try and buy low right now, especially with all of the injury uncertainty surrounding the league. If you're someone like me who has been absolutely demolished by both injuries and the highest scoring team seemingly every single week in your league, a guy like Marquise Brown, although he's a volatile option, he is one of the best bets in the league to have like a 25 to 30 point fantasy game at the receiver position at any given time, because that's the type of player he is. Again, there's a lot of risk rewards with Marquise Brown, but given the fact that he hasn't really had a big boom type game yet this season, I think you can comfortably make a low ball offer for him and maybe even get him at a fairly cheap price right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I don't think I'm as high on Marquise Brown as you may be, but you made a good point with injuries and how uncertain the season is, and the fact that he is a safe-esque player in terms of points, and he is a boom player, so he has a lot of upside. So, quite frankly, you're right. I mean, I feel most people probably won't ask for much given what he's doing. People have, they're far and nearsighted for some things. So, yeah, if you're a team that needs a wide receiver, I would advocate doing what you just described.
Yeah, and I mean, with those injuries so far, I mean, we've seen Paris Campbell go, Alan Lazard go. We've seen the bigger name guys like Chris Godwin's probably not playing this week. Julio Jones tried to give it a go this week, and then he got ruled out at halftime.
Same thing with Calvin Ridley. He was not healthy. You could tell he had 0 points.
Oh, yeah, Calvin Ridley was hobbled. Then you got guys like A.J. Brown, who hasn't played yet this season. I mean, he played week 1, but you can tell he was obviously hampered by an injury in week 1. So a guy like Marquise Brown, if he has one of those big weeks, he really can make up for that slack that's on the rest of your roster right now. And that's a reason why I would like to go out and buy him low wherever I can. Obviously, if you're in a dynasty league, it's going to be a bit tougher to buy him since he is a super young receiver and he is on a phenomenal offense. But if you are in a redraft league like this video is intending, I think you can get him for a pretty cheap price right now. So we're going to move on. I will let you take it away with your first sell high of the day.
Some people might not agree because a lot of people are high on this guy, and I personally don't dislike him. I just think he's in a terrible team for his play style, and that is Joe Mixon. I think their offensive line is garbage, hence why you see poor Joe Burrow, Mr. Handsome himself, die 12 times a game. And to no exception, you look at Mixon's points besides this prior game where he literally exploded, he hasn't done much. And he's played some teams that have okay to average run defenses, and he still wasn't able to do anything. Granted, he was able to explode onto the scene. And I'm pulling his schedule up because I was just looking at it. It's not the easiest schedule. Mr. Mixon plays Baltimore, then the Colts, then Cleveland, then Tennessee, then has a bye week, then plays Pittsburgh, then plays Washington. That's all right. New York. So he has a good back half, but then he also plays Pittsburgh and Dallas and Houston again towards the end. So my point is, I'm not sure you'll see many outings with how many points did he have? 42 again. And I honestly think you should sell high. Mikey mentioned injuries, and you could use this to your advantage when selling high. Chubb owners, Christian McCaffrey owners, Austin Ekeler owners, they might be wanting a running back. And if you have Mixon, and if you need a receiver, or you just want another running back, I would sell Mixon.
Yeah, I completely agree with you in terms of selling Joe Mixon for high. I mean, prior to this week, people were literally begging for trade offers on Joe Mixon because they were looking for any kind of value to get. Yep. This is going to be that outlier type of game. Joe Mixon, he's not going to score 45 points in a single game for the rest of this season. There's no way. He's not – you know how rare it is that we're going to see him find the end zone 3 times in a single game and be that involved in the passing game. Like, it's just not in the range of possibilities. This is not a sustainable thing. He's not going to keep it up. We're going to see a lot more of the Joe Mixon from weeks 1 to week 3 down the road, as opposed to the Joe Mixon that we finally saw in week 4. So if I can get a really, really good offer on Joe Mixon right now, again, coming off of a 46-point performance, I'm not selling him low. Like, I'm not going to sell him just to sell him. There's a reason why we're saying he's a sell high, because you want to get a legitimate offer. Like, if somebody turns around and it's like, whoa, Joe Mixon just had a 46-point week. Here's, I don't know, Miles Sanders or something like that. You know, or even a top-range wide receiver for Joe Mixon coming off of a 46-point game. As I've mentioned in previous videos, guys that are coming off of massive games like this, it is always the best time to sell. So I would definitely put Joe Mixon out on the trade block. See if you can get some feelers, because people who are slaves to recency bias are going to fall in love with Mixon this week.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, there's a lot of Mixon. Well, there was a lot of Mixon hype prior to the season. So mixed with that, with the outlier game, definitely could get someone to buy in and sell high on him.
Oh, for sure. But now I know you also have a couple buy lows today, so I'll let you go on your first buy low here.
Yeah, I know you also wanted to talk about this guy. So they say great minds think alike in terms of buy low, but that is Mr. Deebo Samuel of the 49ers. And some may be saying, what, buy low? And if you're thinking that, you are a smart fantasy owner and you probably already have him on your roster. But if you didn't get him, definitely go out and get him. And I say that because he just came back. He didn't have a great performance. Granted, his targets were limited, and the Niners are using their second and third string quarterback. Weird flex, but see if it works. But with that being said, I made that joke because Mr. Handsome, Jimmy Garoppolo, does come back soon. And with that, I would also see an uptick in volume and value for Deebo Samuel. So you don't want to wait for that to happen for Mr. Deebo, to trade for Mr. Deebo Samuel. So I would try to acquire him as soon as possible, like right now or tomorrow, because as soon as he has, and he's capable of having a monster game because he's a very talented receiver, only in the sophomore season. And really, the only other option on that passing offense is, well, 2 options. There's Kittle and Brandon Ayuk, who's emerged into also a solid rookie. But they're banged up on running backs, and some of them appear to be out for a while. So there's really no passing backs to steal volume. So Deebo's going to emerge into a wide receiver 2 or a solid flex play every game for the rest of the season, essentially. And you could probably acquire him for not much, depending upon your redraft league. So I would make it a priority to try to acquire Deebo Samuel if you need a receiver.
Oh, for sure. And if it's someone who drafted Deebo Samuel in your redraft league with the intention that Deebo was going to come back and immediately start putting up numbers that he had last year, use this performance against them. Maybe they didn't look into the fact that the coaches were saying Deebo Samuel was going to be limited. Maybe they're not looking into the fact that he only saw 3 targets. I believe he had a rushing attempt too for like 10 yards. So he had four total touches for like 45 yards, which that in itself is pretty damn good. Made the most out of his limited opportunities. But Deebo Samuel, as we saw in 2019, he can ball out. He will ball out. This is a great team, especially once they get Jimmy G back. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers are looking like my dynasty fantasy football team right now, where just every single player is injured. It is absolutely absurd. But once they get all of those guys back, especially Jimmy Garoppolo, Deebo Samuel is going to see a massive uptick. And I think he could see a massive uptick as soon as this upcoming week. You know, they said they were going to bring along Deebo a little slower. There's a reason why he was limited this week. Depending on how he practices and how he's feeling, maybe they will give him a full workload next week. You know, he's still not going to pass George Kittle as the number one target on this offense. It's going to be almost impossible for anyone to come into San Francisco and pass George Kittle because he's that good of a player. But Deebo Samuel is going to be the de facto wide receiver number one on this team, I think. And once he's fully healthy, I mean, the sky is going to be the limit for the second year in a row with Deebo Samuel. So I really, really like this call to go out and buy him low.
Yeah, I'm happy you agree. And one more thing, I'm just looking to add more fuel to the fire and why you should do this. His last 3 games, which would be in most leagues if you do, you know, normal leagues, not the 17-week crap of fantasy. He plays Washington, Dallas, and Arizona to end the year. So and that's not any more of a reason to acquire him. That's just that's surefire points on your roster is what I'm saying.
So basically, if you can make the playoffs and you got Deebo on your roster, you're going to have a fun time in the playoffs.
That's what I'm getting at. He also plays the Saints, the Dolphins, the Packers, the Washington football team, like I said that. So, yeah, he has quite a few easy matchups if you want to look at that as well. So all signs point to get people.
For sure. Now I'm going to talk about my first sell high of the day. I brought him up a couple of weeks ago when I was flying solo. I'm going to bring him up again because he's had another big performance. It's going to be Odell Beckham Jr. He had 2 rushes for 73 yards and a score. And then he caught 5 of 8 targets for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mind you, everyone saw that Jarvis Landry to OBJ connection for the touchdown, which was awesome. Don't get me wrong.
Quarterback controversy in Cleveland? No,
Jarvis Landry is the most efficient passer right now in Cleveland. Yeah. But, I mean, OBJ, he had himself an OBJ-type game. You know, but let's not pretend like Landry is going to throw him a touchdown every week. Let's not pretend that he's going to run for 70 yards and additional score every week. Let's not pretend like he's going to see the end zone multiple times every single week. Here's the bottom line. When it comes to OBJ, you got to look at the offense as a whole. More importantly, you got to look at Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield, out of the first 4 games of the season, he has topped 200 yards once this entire time. All the other times, it was like 185, 155. I'm pretty sure he had closer to like 140 one of the weeks. But OBJ at this point, he's kind of just a big play specialist. He's only going to go off if he hits this big play. Now, we got lucky. We saw OBJ hit the big play 3 separate times this week, but that's not going to be the case every week. We're going to be lucky to see him hit that big play even once. You put that together with Cleveland's rest of the season schedule is just very far from friendly in terms for the wide receivers. He's only going to have games like this where the trick play is working. He's only going to have games like this where I don't know. I mean, it's going to be very rare to see him have even half of this type of game for the rest of the season because this is just a rare oddity type thing. Plus, I mean, he did it against the Dallas Cowboys, who have had a league worst secondary. They've been completely run all over, passed all over, completely ran into the ground by opposing offenses. And this was the absolute dream scenario for OBJ. So I would leverage this massive performance with a massive sell high tag on OBJ because, again, you can look at this in many ways, but the way I'm looking at it is this. He had 73 rushing yards and a score. That's not going to happen. He's not rushing for 70 yards or a score, arguably, for the rest of the season. He's not going to catch a pass for a touchdown from Jarvis Landry again this season. Maybe once because they have a weird connection. But if Baker Mayfield is throwing for under 200 yards in 75% of the games, the law of averages just spells disaster for OBJ. So if you can use this massive performance to leverage yourself to get OBJ off your roster for a really decent penny, I 100% would this week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I personally haven't touched Odell since has been in Cleveland, and it's proven to work out for me. I mean, I think another factor, you mentioned Landry in terms of their connection and quarterback to receiver, which is just interesting in itself. That's a topic for another video. Um, Landry is kind of a guy who's underperforming, and I expect, and you can probably agree, most people would agree that he's going to bounce back. So that's going to take volume away from Odell, like you're saying, and Odell's not going to ball out like that. So if Jarvis resurges, then Odell's getting even less touches, meaning it's more imperative, like you're saying, to sell high now, why he had one of the craziest games we'll ever see from a wide receiver in history. I mean, how many times has a receiver rushed for over 50 yards, caught a touchdown, and scored a touchdown, caught a touchdown from another receiver, and also had a X amount of receiving yards on top of that? It doesn't ever happen. That's not common. And like you said, it's because of the Cowboys' secondary. If you look, is ass. They've gotten shredded every week. I'm an Eagles fan, and I'm confident my Eagles, who are, I don't even know what they are, they can probably score 30 points on the Cowboys, and that's saying something. So it's like it's an outlier game. I mean, if you have Odell, it's try to trade him for a running back or whatever you need. I mean, I personally would not hold on to Odell because he's not going to come close to that for the rest of the year. I'd be surprised if he even hits 20 points again that often the rest of the season.
Yeah, so for me, he's an obvious sell high. I mean, admittedly, I got forced into taking him as a flex option in one of my leagues because he fell to like the 6th round or something ridiculous like that. I've been plugging and playing him in. I had a really fun time this week. But in that league, you bet your ass I'm going to be trying to sell OBJ after this performance. But moving on to my second buy low of the day, and I'm going to talk about T. Higgins, wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Ooh,
So in week 4, he had a rush for 13 yards, and he caught 4 balls from 7 targets for 77 yards. That's not too bad of a stat line for a rookie. Now, the most impressive thing with T. Higgins is that over the course of the last 3 weeks, he has been targeted 22 times. He is the number 2 targeted player, only behind Tyler Boyd from Joe Burrow over there in Cincinnati. So his 13 points in week 4 and these next 2 matchups, he gets Baltimore and Indianapolis. You can combine those 3 things right there, the low point total and the 2 hard matchups. You can talk your way into grabbing him for pretty cheap from whoever currently has T. Higgins on their roster. I know he was a popular waiver claim last week, and he had himself a decent game this week. But I think you can leverage those 3 things together into getting him for the low. And I got to say, Cincinnati's schedule following week 6, it's one of the easiest for wide receivers in the entire league. And you put the fact together that Joe Burrow will be throwing the rock an absolute shit ton. I mean, Joe Burrow has been throwing the football, I believe, top 5, top 6 in terms of attempts in the entire league over the first 4 weeks. So T. Higgins, he's going to have plenty of opportunities. Now, if you want to, I think you could even wait until after this game against Baltimore, or even after the game against Indianapolis over the next 2 weeks, because I don't think T. Higgins is going to show out massively over the next 2 weeks. But again, his second half of season schedule is just too juicy to ignore. He's very talented. He's got a lot of potential, a lot of promise. Higgins is going to be one of my favorite buy low targets ahead of week 5.
I completely agree. I was one of those people that went out and waiver claimed Higgins in 2 weeks because I see the potential. I didn't fall into the AJ Green hype, and I can't catch anymore. It looks like watching the games. Poor guy. So the whole that joke aside, besides Boyd, there's no tight end play. I mean, Uzomah's out for the year. Samples, the jury's out on that. So it's literally the Boyd and the Higgins show going forward. And like I talked about earlier, the running game isn't the best. Mixon and Bernard are decent passing backs, but they're not doing much. So, and you said Burrow's slinging the rock a crap ton of times a game. So I think it only makes sense to take a chance in T. Higgins. And like you said, you can wait or you can try to get him now. And people aren't going to probably sell him for that high because I didn't even have a number 1 waiver claim in the league I'm in with you when I got him. I had 4 or 6 in waiver claim when I got him. So that speaks volumes. There was either 3 or 5 other people that did not claim him.
Yeah, and Higgins seems like a really good guy to go out and potentially explore as a trade option if you are hindered by those receiver injuries. So he's definitely an interesting player to look at moving forward as a buy low. But I know you got a couple more guys to go, so I'm going to let you take it away with your second sell high of the day.
Yes. I think my second sell high is probably the most relevant in terms of he just played yesterday. Um, and he did better than I think anyone in the world would have expected. Even Packers fans, don't lie to me. You guys didn't expect Big Bob, Tonyan, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, to score 3 touchdowns and have that many yards. Yeah, but he looked like a man amongst boys last night. It was crazy. It was nuts. I mean, I was telling you before the video, I almost picked him up in 2 leagues, and I'm really mad at myself. I'm kind of smacking myself in the face. I did not do that because holy crap, you can sell this man for a lot. I mean, most people in fantasy football, they generally struggle with tight end, I feel, unless they go out and grab an elite one. And I only say that because every year I see the same message in my leagues with Mikey or other leagues pop up. So-and-so says, looking to buy a top-tier tight end or flex play, wants to contend. And I feel it's true because outside of the top couple options, it's kind of shaky. It is deeper in recent years, but still, it's a hard position to fill. Especially with injuries looming. We talked about that early. Granted, most tight ends are healthy, but still, you never know. Big Bob, like, honestly, just sell high. I mean, he had 30, I think it was 33.8 points to be exact yesterday. But leading up to that, he's been doing well. In the second week, he had 10 points, and then in the third week, he had 16 points. So it's not only a sell high in terms of you're explicitly selling him off of his big ass game yesterday. There's volume and a little bit of track record. If you want to negotiate the deal, you can say, look, he's hit double digits each week since he's actually played. And one of the other tight ends on the roster, DeGoria for the Packers, got hurt. Not that he got that many snaps, but that paves the way more for Mr. Tonyan to sell. Because I'm not sure if he'll ever hit this number again, kind of how we talked about Mixon never hitting a number again. I don't know if Tonyan will ever hit this high of again, and he also could end up losing his job to Sternberger because Aaron Rodgers spreads the rock around. So I would sell.
One of the big things to remember with Tonyan, too, is Davante Adams is coming back next week.
Yep. I didn't even get to that. I was going to get to that. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, so, I mean, granted –
And Lazard eventually, too.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, granted, Tonyan did have he combined for about 50 points in the last 2 weeks, which is absolutely stellar, not only just for the tight end position, but for any fantasy football position. 50 points over the course of 2 weeks is awesome. But Davante Adams has been out the last 2 weeks now. Allen Lazard was out this week, and he's going to be out probably for at least another 5 to 6 weeks. That's just my personal guess. I don't even think they've really disclosed much about that Allen Lazard injury. But either way, I mean, Davante Adams, he's going to be back next week. He was so insanely close to suiting up on Monday Night Football. He's going to be playing again. He's going to go back to being Aaron Rodgers' favorite target. Now, will I be surprised if Robert Tonyan sniffs the end zone again? No, I won't be surprised at all. But I will be surprised if he has more than 5 targets all game because it's going to go back to just Aaron Rodgers peppering Davante Adams and Aaron Jones once again, which by the way, so heated that Matt LaFleur won't get Aaron Jones more involved in this game. That's a totally different topic.
It's fine. I have Aaron Jones in 2 leagues. You can talk about it for a second. I think anybody watching this video, if they stick through, if they have Aaron Jones, they know the pain. They feel us. Because it is invigorating to see when they go for it on 4th and 1 and they put the other guy, what's his name,
Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I forget his name because I don't want to remember it. Aaron Jones. Why?
I know. Well, and that's the thing. Going forward, I mean, I think Aaron Jones will be more involved. And as we've seen, Jamal Williams is plenty involved in the passing game. So I think as this team starts to get healthy, especially when Davante Adams gets back, Robert Tonyan's going to see a downgrade pretty much immediately. So I definitely do like the call to sell high on him. And coming off of a massive 3-touchdown performance on a Monday Night Football game, I think it definitely screams perfect time to sell.
Yeah, no, it's definitely perfect. And one more thing, a lot of you guys might not happen because he wasn't rostered by a lot. So if you have a higher waiver claim, I think Mikey would agree. If you can work something out, it's worth claiming him to sell him off because you might be able to get a king's ransom for him because people generally overpay for tight ends.
I completely agree. I like the call to use your potential top top 2 waiver priority to get him and working out a deal immediately. I've done this before when I've had a top waiver claim and I didn't really want anything. And hey, if I can turn a waiver claim into a different player that I want, or some draft picks, if you're in that type of league, I'm always down for it. But I know you have one more guy for us today here. I believe it's a buy low, and I actually don't even know who it is. You gave me a few ideas before we started, and you didn't actually tell me who it is. So fill me in. Who's going to be the buy low?
I was going to throw a loop, and I'm not doing the two. Like I'm doing 2 players, but it's really just one player. So I was debating, and you can listen, and it was Nick Chubb or Austin Ekeler, and I only said these 2 because in the pedigree of running backs, Barkley's out for the year. We all know that. CMC, you're an owner of CMC. You're also a fan of CMC. CMC owners, rightfully so, are still going to want the moon because he's also coming back soon.
Yeah,
Ekeler,
as soon as week 6.
Exactly. Ekeler and Chubb just went out, and both of those teams have a guy who can kind of fill in the role, similar to Mike Davis, but I think they have more upside. Hunt, obviously. So my point is, and they're going to be out for a while, which is going to fill up the bulk of the fantasy season. And the reason I'm only saying these 2 guys is because they're in the same boat. They're going to miss about the same time. I think they're buy lows because I think you can move less than what you would expect depending upon the owner and acquire them. And obviously your league should have IR spots. If it doesn't, you should probably leave that league. You can stash said player on the roster and have them return for a playoff push. Granted, that could backfire because they might get hurt might stay out for longer, but both are expected to come back. And I know, Mikey, I cheated and did 2 players, but I thought it was reasonable because they're both in the same situation and they got hurt on the same exact day. And they're both going to miss about a month and a half. That's why I said it's up for the people who are watching. It's their preference. And honestly, just feel out the both of them and see which, owner in the league, hopefully it's not the same guy. That would suck for that person and the trading. See what they want. I mean, obviously they want a running back, but, you never know. So I would just reach out and see if you can acquire them because if they come back like week 10-ish, that's a perfect guy to help you get in the playoffs if you still need to get there and excel in the playoffs.
Yeah, I like that call. Granted, I'm only going to – I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago when I was flying solo and I was telling everyone to go and get Christian McCaffrey after he got hurt. You're only going to want to buy one of these guys if you have like a 3-1 or 4-0 record right now. If you're someone who's in a pinch, you're fighting to stay alive. If you're 0-4, 1-3, I probably wouldn't go out and buy low on one of these guys. In fact, I would, if I have one of these guys and I am desperate for some wins, this is when I'm probably trying to pawn one of them off. But you're not going to be able to sell them high because they're going to be out for at least 4 to 6 weeks at this point. But as I was saying, if you are one of those people who has a winning record currently, especially if you're 4-0, I think you definitely can make it because
4-0, it's nice.
Shut up. But I mean, yeah, because if you have a winning record like that, chances are you have a very solid roster going on, and you could probably afford to lose 1, maybe even 2 of your guys if you want to trade up for a Nick Chubb or an Austin Ekeler. Now, you obviously know there's a lot of risk that comes with it, but if you've already set yourself up, if you're sitting at 4-0, 3-1, you can probably afford a loss here or there. These guys could be a total difference maker when the playoffs start for you. So I really like the call.
Thank you. It's very relevant because I have Nick Chubb in 2 leagues, and one of them you just got mad at me. I'm 4-0. The other one I'm 2-2 in, so I'm on both ends of the spectrum. In one end, I'm going to have to literally do what you said and probably pawn him off, and on the other end, I'm going to put him on IR and just wait. So
yeah, but so speaking of the injured backs and bringing up Christian McCaffrey, I have one last sell high of the day, and it's Mike Davis of the Carolina Panthers. So I don't need to tell anyone that Mike Davis has been stellar while Christian McCaffrey's been out. Even in week 4, he rushed the ball 16 times, got 84 yards in the score, and he caught 5 of his 6 targets for 27 additional yards. He has looked fantastic with Christian McCaffrey out. Even when he spelled Christian McCaffrey just in the 4th quarter of week 2, he put up, I think, 16 fantasy points or something like that just in that final quarter. And then he's had over 20 PPR fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. Now this one, using Mike Davis as a sell high, it's going to be a very hard thing to do. But if someone is desperate enough for a win this upcoming week, you might be able to swing a decent penny for Davis.
Yes.
So the reason why I'm saying that is because, as we mentioned, Christian McCaffrey could be back as soon as week 6, which means Mike Davis's last week of fantasy relevancy at all is going to end in week 5 against the Atlanta Falcons. While I would absolutely love to have him against Atlanta this weekend because I think Mike Davis is an easy top 10 option against that defense, if you want trade value, you're not going to get anything from him if you wait until after this game, no matter how big of a game he has. Because the second Carolina says Christian McCaffrey's coming back, nobody's valuing Mike Davis anymore at all. And I guarantee when he gets back, he is going to see a few more touches than we're used to seeing Mike Davis get on a weekly basis, especially since Carolina was reminded 2 things. Christian McCaffrey's human, and Mike Davis is a half-decent running back. But he's not going to have any standalone value. I mean, he's going to be a weekly touchdown-dependent flex option at the very best when Christian McCaffrey is back. He's not going to be a solid enough option at all. He's not going to put out any games like he did the last couple of weeks or like he's about to do in Atlanta. So if you can afford to, I would try to sell him ahead of this matchup with Atlanta. Again, it is such an enticing matchup. If there's someone that is like that desperate for a win, they're going to shell out something for Mike Davis, even if he is a 1-week rental.
No, you're definitely right. I mean, he's definitely one of the best players to sell. I mean, you're obviously this is your last chance to sell him, obviously, because once CMC comes back, like you said, the value is pretty much diminished. But also, you just said sell him to a guy who needs a running back for a week or a flex play. Also, hopefully, the guy in your league who has McCaffrey doesn't own Davis, because if he does, you could also sell high so to the guy who owns CMC, because that guy could handcuff Davis and CMC in case further injury. So there's definitely options there, and you definitely should sell high on him because unless you have CMC, there's no reason to hold on to Mike Davis.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of been shown that Mike Davis is one of the best handcuffs to own in this league. I don't know if he's that talented or if this offense is just made for the running back. I think it's a little bit of both, but the offense is, since they have Christian McCaffrey, the offense is very clearly made for the running back, in my opinion. But yeah, that's going to be it for us today here. Mike Davis is the last sell high of the day. Dylan, before we get in wrapping up, anything left you got to say?
Just make sure you listen to us and sell high and buy low on those guys. Don't wait, because you might wait a week or two and said player might get hurt that you're trying to acquire or sell, and then you can't do that anymore. So if you want to do it and you have means to do it, just do it. Fantasy is made on gambles. I mean, I'm going to say this is personal, but it's very relevant to the video. We talked about both of the players, one more than the other one. So I have Chubb in Mikey and I's league that I'm doing very well in. Not going to say the record because it's a sore subject.
4-0.
Yeah, I know. I've sucked every year in this league. This is my chance. I literally traded for Kareem Hunt last week, and I have Chubb, and I just did that to establish a good handcuff. And what do you know? Chubb got hurt. So the point is, if you have a gut feeling, go with it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that piece of advice a lot. But definitely go out, pay attention to our buy low and sell high guys from this week because, again, those guys like Joe Mixon, OBJ, they're not getting you another 40-point week. I mean, come on, that's just ridiculous. So sell high while you can. But anyway, that's going to do it for us here on the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Thanks for tuning in today for today's episode of Fantasy Trade Targets, and I will see everyone again next week.